very good evening, everyone. Welcome to Footy Classified for a brand new year ahead of the season opener on Friday night between Collingwood and Fremantle. Lots to get through tonight. Buddy Franklin signing the biggest story of the summer. We'll talk about that. Was Andrew Demetrio pushed? The Tigers' off-season's been interesting. And Jonathan Brown to join us after some criticism of his Brisbane Lions, led, I might add, by our man Matthew Lloyd, who joins us for a new year. Welcome, Lloydie.
Welcome, Gaz. And I did hit a raw nerve up there in Brisbane, so I look forward to chatting with the big fella.
Football's First Lady, Carolyn Wilson, good evening. Welcome to you.
Craig.
Did Sydney get it right with the decision to lure Buddy Franklin?
No, they didn't, Craig. I don't like the deal. I think it's a massive finger to the entire industry for all the wrong reasons. I think it belies everything that the Sydney Swans have built over many, many years. I know Buddy's big news in Sydney, but I fear it'll be front page, not back page, that will dominate the headlines for Buddy. And I just think that such a high-risk strategy cannot be defended by them. When they do defend it, they point to Alistair Lynch. And I know Andrew Ireland deserves his mantle as one of the most respected CEOs, footy managers in the game. But his only when you ask him about it, his only real defence is Alistair Lynch. Now, that was a different era and a different time. He's not going to play for 9 years. And I'm not sure that everyone in the footy club was actually behind or knew about the length of this deal when they agreed to it.
But now it's emerged that he came to them. You couldn't not do it, surely. I mean, and that 10 million will look like around the loose change by the time it's finished, given the way the salary cap
changes because of the salary cap. Lloydie, what about you in terms of the actual mechanics of how it's going to work? That's what I'm interested in. Now, the deal's done. I'm going to talk about it in greater detail shortly. But how's it going to work?
Within their structure?
Yeah.
I think that obviously Kurt Tippett will play deeper. I think Buddy can roam. But I think that I agree with Caro that it was a ludicrous deal. 9 years too long when Buddy's best footy's probably behind him. But I think it's a bit harsh to say he'll end up on the front pages more than the back page because you're already insinuating that he's trouble. I'm not sure he's that bad.
No, I'm not suggesting trouble. I just think that people in the
front pages
AFL
is trouble.
No, I think the AFL and Sydney are absolutely obsessed by the fact that he's going to be big news in Sydney. But I'm not sure that Buddy's gone to Sydney wanting to be big news, and I don't think he's going to enjoy. I'm talking about being photographed.
The same though, and they were brilliant for Sydney.
I don't think they got the publicity Buddy's going to get.
What about the story itself, though? I mean, it's been in place now for 4 or 5 months, so we've gotten used to it. But at the time, it was one of the most dramatic signings of all time. No one saw it coming, the world told us. The media got on their high horses. This is the greatest shock and surprise of all time.
Well,
I want to hark back to September the 24th, the Footy Classified show during the finals, and just remind us what our man, Craig Hutchison, had to say.
I have a theory or an opinion that I think there's another natural spot for him where there's a third team that needs to get...
It's an informed opinion.
No, it's not. It's just an opinion. Here's how it should go down, Gary.
All right.
Sydney need to make a play here. They can get this deal done. Hawthorn's offer at the moment is around $1 million, right? GWS's offer is $2 million. Sydney don't have to offer $2 million because he wants to get out of Melbourne, the town, as opposed to Hawthorn, the club.
So you think that's the big factor here?
I think if you put 1.5 in front of him at Sydney, he'd take it over $2 million at GWS. Mumford's out the door. Like, Mumford he's got
we don't know that.
Hawthorn have got an offer in front of him. Collingwood have got an offer in front of him. GWS got an offer in front of him. Reid hasn't reached his potential, Gary.
Hutchie, let us stew on it over the off-season.
But are you with him or against him?
No, not quite there.
Having said all that, I think Liam Pickering was spotted having chats to GWS officials this week.
Well, he may have had chats with them, but the deal was done, and that is staggering. And I put it to you, you knew very well that he was going to Sydney. Don't tell me that was a guess, because that was the most left-field suggestion of the year, and you nailed it. You nailed it down to the players who were going to leave and make way. So that deal was done.
Well, the theory, everyone dismissed it because they didn't think they had the money.
We dismissed it because we
but they had the money, didn't they? They always had the money.
You knew about the deal.
I will say this. I'm really surprised that the Giants' offer was so poor. I mean, if they really wanted him to offer 1.2, didn't show much enterprise.
12 months he'd been in the making the deal.
Can you answer the question, though, that Gary
You
asked?
knew the deal was done.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't know it was done.
Come on, Hutchie. You can't just throw that up as a theory.
No, I didn't know it was done. But he wanted to go to live in Sydney. There's only 2 teams that play there.
Is it right and moral and proper that a player 2 weeks after playing in a let's face it, a shock loss, they were expected to win the premiership in 2012, goes to the team that beat his team, that has been his team, that has looked after him, helped make him the superstar he is, and says, I want to play for you. Is that right? And to go on with that, is it right that the player all year blatantly, publicly courts Greater Western Sydney, knowing all year that he's got no intention of going there?
Well, I tell you why it's right, whether you like it or not, is because they won. The Hawthorn, the club that he was at, won the premiership. He was a major contributor throughout.
I'm not talking about the end. I'm talking about the means.
The end justifies the means.
Was the means right and moral and proper?
Well, it's not anything that we're used to. So is this, what I think the question is saying, is this the changing landscape of AFL footy? We've seen it in NRL football
Gary,
for a long time,
did one
Matthew.
small part of you, when you heard that Buddy went to Sydney
Shocked.
2 weeks after the grand
shocked.
final,
Unlike Hutchie, who knew, I was shocked.
that he would do it so soon after his team had been beaten?
Well, I thought he was going to GWS 2 weeks after the grand final,
But
so
Karen,
he was on the way.
You've got to get with the modern times. Your romanticism is admirable but out of date.
And I am of that
Players,
opinion.
big players move, things happen.
I
It wasn't a
understand that.
distraction.
I understand that. I don't like the way
So
he
is
went
this going to
about it.
happen, Lloydie? This is what we've got to get to. So you've got players at the moment, the Bryce Gibbs of the world, the James Frawleys and whoever else who are out of contract. If they commit at some stage, should that be made public?
Well, I think it's something that we have to, in the AFL, whether we like it or not, get used to, because we can either put up with Tom Scully and these type of players lying to us all year and saying, oh, I just want to worry about my footy, or we can do what Cameron Smith does in the NRL and just says, I'm actually deciding between the Brisbane Broncos
Phil Davis didn't
and the
lie.
Melbourne Storm.
Phil Davis told the truth and the football club lied,
and
in fact.
they got rid of him. But
So would you prefer it now? If, for instance...
I'm getting my head around that being, the way to go in the future.
Well, the Hawks have responded beautifully. I know it's only the early stages, but there's every indication that they've moved on and moved on quickly. They've been... Their 2014 NAB Challenge period's been staggering when you consider what happened in the 2013 NAB Cup. They lost to the Gold Coast, they lost to Brisbane, they lost to the Bulldogs and Richmond. Yet they've come out this year on the back of a premiership and smacked Brisbane, smacked North Melbourne and then belted Melbourne on the weekend. So Alistair Clarkson's having none of this 2009 business.
No, we were shocked. I remember playing them in 2009 when they were a nasty team in 08 and you'd have a crack at them. They just wouldn't fight back in 09. They were complacent. Players put on weight. He's not letting that happen again. Dual position players. Rioli's been half back, Mitchell half back, Lewis plays forward.
Gibson kicked goals.
Gibson kicked goals. So he's brought that into the game, and that's why he's the number one coach in the game, because he's inventing and he's always one step ahead of the rest of the competition.
He's got premiership hangover paranoia at the moment, and it's manifesting itself well. Brad Sewell,
Not good
by
for
the
the
way.
rest of the competition.
No, it's not. Brad Sewell out for a couple of weeks with a hamstring. Will miss the start of the season. Dramatic week in AFL headquarters. Andrew Demetriou, the long-standing chief executive, stood down today, and over the weekend, Patrick Smith of the Australian suggested that he was pushed. That didn't sit well with Andrew Demetriou tonight.
Yeah, well, it offended me because it was wrong. And when I'd made the decision a long time ago, Mike, and I'd actually told a few people confidentially who I trust. So I don't know where he got that from. It's just wrong.
Caro, is he entitled to be offended?
Well, I don't think he's super offended, but he wouldn't be happy because I don't think it is right, Craig. I mean, in fairness to Patrick, he put forward a theory and backed it up with arguments that I didn't agree with, but Patrick will stand by those, and I think he continued to stand by them today. I don't think Andrew Demetriou was pushed. I think that the Commission and Andrew Demetriou all agreed in 2012 it was time to start steering him out. Gillan McLachlan came in then and sat in the chair for 2.5 months, if we remember, and did a pretty good job. That was seen to be the first trial for Gillan. He was going to leave last year. He's admitted that now, but he wanted to stay once the Essendon story broke, and I can understand that as well, although I do think he should have done the negotiating with Essendon last year and not been a commissioner in that sense.
Carol, I've heard you make comments in the last 24 hours that you can't see Andrew seeing out this season. Why is that? Why is that?
No. Well, Jeff Brown's getting married in the Italian hills, isn't he, for one thing, in the middle of the year, and I think Andrew would be keen to get over to that. No, quite seriously.
Come on, it's a serious comment.
What's that?
Come on.
Well,
It's not the offsiders. Get into it. What's going on?
Well, he'll be back.
He does like a mid-year holiday.
He's suggested he's going to see the year out.
I don't think he will. I think he'll be gone by May or June.
Who will take over?
Well, if Gillan McLachlan gets the job, and he's certainly leading the field at the moment, then Gillan will move in, I think, in late May, early June, Gary, and I think Andrew will be gone by the end of June at the latest. Even if an outside candidate comes in, and there is every chance that that could happen if a good candidate emerges, then I still can't see Andrew looking after him until the end of the season. I think he'll go by June, and I don't think it's healthy to be in caretaker mode for an entire year. It shouldn't happen.
Anointing Gil McLachlan?
I absolutely think you should get the job, without question.
Let's move on to the Tigers, who've had an interesting off-season. Cara, I know you're doom and gloom about your side and think they won't make the 8, but they've had some off-field distractions, I guess is the best way to describe it. And the first one was the Jake King situation, which I think Andrew Demetriou put really fairly and squarely back on the agenda during his media rounds in recent times. Should the Richmond Footy Club be able to tell Jake King who he can and can't fraternise with?
Well, they've told him, Richmond, that you can't bring him around the change rooms, can't bring him to match days. Right?
This is Toby Mitchell.
This is Toby Mitchell, yeah.
The family friend of his.
But they can't hold Jake's King's hand, and they can't really watch him minute by minute. So I don't think Richmond can do any more. It's probably not the smartest move by Jake when he's trying to fight for his career this season. But I think it's all working okay at the moment.
They've
for
been
Richmond.
consistent on this, the Richmond Footy Club, in terms of the message they've given to him, and we'll talk about Dustin Martin as well.
I think that, you know, Jake King's really big mistake was to take Toby Mitchell into the dressing rooms without telling anyone, without asking permission. I mean, he's a man who was facing serious charges.
Okay, so he can get over that, surely.
Oh, they were very unhappy about that.
Okay.
And I think what concerned Richmond after that was that then he was seen out in public with him again at some sporting event over the summer. I mean, I don't blame him. It was unfortunate he got caught having a cup of coffee with him. But to then, I think, go to the club and say, could they go to the tennis together? I just think there was an element of the finger.
Well, what level of control can they have? I mean,
Of course they can, Gary. The integrity of the sport is everything.
Who's control?
Richmond can mandate that Jake King cannot see whoever they want to.
No, they can't.
They can, Gary.
How can they
this was
apply
cricket.
that? How
This
can
was
you
cricket.
apply who Jake King doesn't
Because
see?
the integrity of the game is sacrosanct.
Well, but how do you apply it, Hutchie?
This is a man who's had an attempt on his life, Gary. There's a human
Are you going to
harm
be
factor.
consistent on this line that you take throughout the competition or not?
I don't have no problem with what Andrew Demetriou said. I have no problem with Richmond getting tougher on this.
So you're prepared to go through the AFL and have a look at all the relationships of not only players but
that's happening,
administrators?
though, Gary. Of course, it's happening.
That is
Well, that means you
rubbish.
can't use mobile phones in rooms. You know what? Have a security check to get in now.
To who you see.
So you would sack Jake King then, Hutch?
I
if
think-
you keep seeing.
I think what he's done, what he is doing, is incredibly naive for someone who's hanging onto his career by a thread.
It's a huge. That's right. I mean, his form wasn't great in the final that he played in, and he wasn't alone there. But he didn't exactly, you know, he's not Dustin Martin, is he, in terms of his form? And I also think that it's really disappointing when you've been spoken to and told something, and you continue to publicly see that person. He is a person with very, very serious underworld connections, and I think the club, like Craig said, has got every right. And the other
Essendon
players
have been through this, Gary, last
the
year.
other players get asked about it, Gary, too. I mean, Troy Chaplin, the first interview he gave when he joined the leadership group was about this
Are
friendship.
you aware of other people within the AFL, not only players who have relationships with some people who
Yes.
could, and
Yes.
are they tolerated, not encouraged but tolerated?
I personally have had conversations with those people and told them they're making a big mistake.
Not you. Is there a double standard at play here when they come down hard on a player when we know
I
and you
think
know?
when it's a family member, I think there's an exception to the rule, and I think there are family people at clubs who have family members
yes, okay,
with
but there
criminal
are
connections
others as well.
You're talking about officials.
Well, across the board.
I don't think you go get seen and take them into the dressing room.
Are you sure?
It's time
Well,
for the whole
if I
game
knew
to crack
about
down.
it, I'd be writing about it and
The whole game's
exposing
going to
it.
crack down, Gary. We saw what happened when people get close to Essendon last year.
Yeah, well, I don't think you can... I'm not
If this
sure
was cricket,
how
by the
you
way,
go
they would
enforce it.
throw the book at him regardless.
Gary, the problem with Richmond is that it was one of a series of cracks that began to emerge at that club with off-field disciplinary issues towards the end of the season. I mean, you have the Jake King situation. You hear that Dustin Martin's been playing up towards the end of the season. Then he does the jailhouse thing on the ground in that terrible final they played against
And then
Carlton.
didn't put a foot wrong and trained hard and got back on
No,
track.
well, then he left the club for more money, in fact, and then came back again, so he made a gig of himself.
Okay, but I'm talking about the consistent message from Richmond to these players. So Dustin Martin was told not to fraternise with Dan Connors, for instance,
Yep.
his former teammate,
Yep.
and now he's moving in with him.
Yeah, well, I mean...
Well, where's the consistency, Cara?
Well, Richmond would say to you, and I'm
Big
don't
house,
shoot the
Gary.
messenger.
It's a big house.
Richmond would say that Dan Connors has got his act together. I don't know whether
Oh,
that's
let's hope
true
he
or
has.
not.
I
but
hope he has.
Yeah, I've heard that too, Cara, that it's actually Dan Connors and he lives with his girlfriend and Dustin Martin's moved in there. So it's a totally different situation
They've
to
done
2
a good
years
job
ago.
with Dustin.
And
They
Cara,
stood firm on him.
You
That
and
was
I
good.
were there watching Richmond on Saturday at Friday at Punt Road. They are flying at the moment. So I think we might be looking too much into some of these issues.
How did Jack go? How did Jack Revolt play?
Jack Revolt was kicked a couple of goals late, so didn't have his best day. But you know, something that you're pretty strong on, aren't you, Hutch, with what he's decided to do over the
You took
off-season.
him under your wing and sort of mentored him, and
didn't mentor
one
him.
of the great characters.
a good job.
He's one of the great characters of AFL footy,
Yep.
Jack Revolt.
I'm his biggest fan, and I don't like this. I just think that he's...
Talking about himself.
Yeah, he's such a great leader, great personality. He's good for the game.
Have you spoken to him?
No, I don't know why he's done it.
Why haven't you spoken to him?
Well, I will, but
He's a wonderful player and a great bloke. I wouldn't say he's a great leader. He's not a leader.
he is a
and he
good leader.
doesn't
He's
need
one
to
of
be
the
a great
smartest
leader.
modern-day players about the game there is.
I love the way he plays his footy, but you wouldn't say he's a leader.
He's got a lot to give. I don't know why
I
he's doing
think
it.
I think he's an outstanding part of the football fabric, and I don't know why he's absolutely black-banned himself, because it's not working for him at the moment.
Well, he felt like he got burnt by the media, but and he's just decided he's going to do the basics. So it'll be great. Hopefully he kicks a bag on Saturday night, Cara, and he talks to the media after the game.
All right, we're going to keep moving on. The footy show's back. It was back on Thursday. Cara didn't miss it. It is back again this week, and it is going to be massive. Big names again on Thursday night ahead of Friday's big season opener. Nick Del Santo, the new North Melbourne recruit, he will join us, as will Dyson Heppel, young man that's been under enormous pressure, of course, for the Essendon Footy Club. And Ross Lyon, can he get that much-deserved premiership with the Fremantle Dockers? Now, before we go, I do need to address this, and I'm sorry and I'm embarrassed to do it, but social media's lit up. They want to know whether we're going to revert back to a four-man panel next week, because that bloke, you're on your chin, aren't you? It's just starting to distract.
All right, I don't get a close-up.
I was hoping we would get away with it, but I just want to put it out there. You've had a small infection there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's me, myself and Irene or Norman Gunston. I'm sorry about that, Gary. I've been a bit unwell, but I will be back.
I know we hope
next
to
week.
get better, and I just needed to address it.
Don't you laugh, Caroline.
We're going to take a break. Plenty more still to come, including Jonathan Brown.
Footy Classifieds, brought to you by Home Timber and Hardware. Go where the tradies go. And money back specials from sportsbet.com.au.
Welcome back. You're with Footy Classified live tonight for Home Timber and Hardware. Go where the tradies go. Get involved on Twitter, as many have done already tonight. Hashtag at Footy Classified. Please don't hashtag Chingate anymore. It's getting a little bit offensive early in the program. Now let's get on to Essendon. We're going to spend much time on it tonight. But the Bombers, Caro. Mark Thompson settled in well. James Hird is not there. Can this relationship between the two coexist?
Oh, well, I don't think they'll work together again at Essendon, if that's what you mean. I mean, they've said that James Hird will come back towards the end of the year, at the end of August, I think, when the suspension ends, and that he'll be allowed into the coach's box, was Paul Little's comment. But I would be very, very surprised if Mark Thompson is at Essendon next year. In fact, I would absolutely say not. There are people saying that James Hird won't come back, and even maybe some people within the Essendon Footy Club. I think he probably will, and I don't think Mark will be there next year. I think Mark is now coaching for his reputation.
I find it a bit unusual, Lordo, that they're allowed to talk, James and Bomber. I would have thought that there would be no...
Craig.
Actually, you don't want people
sitting
down for coffee now. You don't want them to talk.
Well, when this has happened around the world, there's no contact allowed in these things. I find it unusual.
Do you think that's how it happens?
Well, yeah, I'm sure it does.
It's a very soft punishment. I mean, we all agree with that.
Yep. Now, interestingly, Paul Little was asked about the future of Bomber beyond this year and whether James Hird would come back by the Footy Show's Damien Barrett.
James is the best person to coach the Essendon Football Club into the future. There is an awareness that when James comes back, he can achieve great things.
What happens to Mark Thompson in 2015?
The agreement we have with Mark is we'll sit down with Mark at the end of 2014 and work out what next. But at this point in time, the agreement we've got is very clearly understood by Mark and the club.
Is it guaranteed that he'll play a role in 2015 when James does return? Or is that still to be decided?
Yeah, as I said, we'll sit down with Mark at the end of this year.
Definitely coming back, James?
Oh, look, we won't know until it happens. I think there still is question marks around it, but I think he probably will. A lot of all these blokes have taken a lot of money out of that football club, haven't they?
Yeah, a lot of pay rises. Now,
Mark Thompson, Simon Goodwin, James Hird.
You've been fascinated. You go on your little obsessions for 2 or 3 days. You've been obsessed by Stephen Dank going to the Riddles Creek Sportsman's Night and speaking, and the panellists speaking with him. I don't really understand.
He's speaking at Crown on the same day that Essendon make their season debut, which is on Friday week. It's a sportsman's lunch. It's a very big function, actually. It's in one of the biggest function rooms at Crown, and I wrote one column about it and go into a 3-day obsession saying that I think it's wrong. I thought it was wrong. Well, the person I mainly took aim at, apart from Riddles Creek, who apparently raising money to build more facilities and club rooms off the back of this man who has wreaked so much havoc to the AFL industry and grassroots footy and the entire game.
If you got an interview with him, would you interview him?
I'm not saying I wouldn't interview him. I wouldn't pay him. I wouldn't pay him for an interview.
No,
he's being paid.
They're entitled to have him, aren't they?
If he walked in here now, would you walk off the set? Would you? You wouldn't be part of the chat. Like you're suggesting that the other talent there do.
Organised by a former Essendon player, premiership player and coach in Dean Wallace, who I think, although he's disgruntled with the club, owed them a bit more than to line up this bloke as a speaker. Mark Harvey is reconsidering his position, who is also appearing, having learnt Dank is there. And my understanding is that Brian Taylor, who is a host of the event, is not over the line yet. Matthew, what do you think about...
I spoke to BT tonight, and he's actually a little disappointed because Riddles Creek's his actual club. So he's hosted this function for the last 4 years. So he said the same thing tonight, Caro, that would Caro take the interview? So he's definitely doing...
He won't say anything anyway, Stephen Dank, will he? What's he going to say?
Knowing Dank, he won't turn up. He's so unreliable. But I don't know if Brian Taylor is 100% over the line yet.
He's doing it. But there's 700 people there, so they'd be pretty disappointed.
You reckon that's a decent thing to do of Dean Wallace, to do that to his club on the day of their first game of the year?
I'm not as Machiavellian as that. I don't know whether he organised it to fall on the same day or not. I've got no idea.
He's organised it to
He's got 700 people there for a country footy club, and
you don't reckon they'd turn up to hear Brian Taylor and Wayne Carey and Mark Harvey and Dermot Brereton?
Yes, they would, I reckon.
Yep, exactly. They don't need Stephen Dank, and they certainly don't need to pay him.
Hey, Lloydie, you've still got great relationships, of course, at Essendon, and the story on the back page of the paper, the Herald Sun, that named the 14 players. What sort of an impact has that had?
Well, if things weren't bad enough, this has pretty much cut the boys to the core more than anything. It's gone from a collective thing to an individual thing, and players, their families and players, it's probably at its worst point at the moment, in regards to... players are being linked to things that they took that they're unsure whether they actually took themselves. And I think that what they're so upset about, it's 14 months now since this first broke. And when is the AFL and ASADA actually going to take responsibility for the mental health of these players?
So is it that serious? You think they're getting to that stage where it's affecting them?
Oh, no doubt. And guys who I've seen as laid-back guys within football and life, I've never seen them so...
I don't agree with that.
Hang on. Are you fearful for any of these players? I don't want you to name names.
I'm not... Yeah, I am, yeah. Or a family member.
Right.
I'm not saying the actual players, but I'm just thinking, when do you think about these players who put trust in things and look to wrap this up? 14 months, that's too long.
Matthew, the AFL are praying for this to end just as much as they are. And in fairness to them, it's out of their hands. ASADA and the federal government have to act. They're the ones who are dragging their heels.
How poor has it been?
They're the ones who have to do something. I agree. I think
if you got Matthew Lloyd here worrying about the mental well-being...
Of course they need to do something.
Well, God, help me. When are they going to do something?
Well, I think it'll happen soon. And if I was to make a tip, I would say that when we do hear from ASADA, and I don't think it'll be too far away, I think we'll hear of officials being served with infraction notices before players.
From the naming the players' point of view, have you got an issue with that or not?
I'll preface by saying I'm sensitive to what Matthew's just said.
I hope you are.
But my initial view was it was a hysterical overreaction by everyone, including the players. I think what really happened was we cleared 28 people in this, didn't we?
Hysterical overreaction.
Didn't it become 42 down to 14? What
about the 14?
So you'd be happy for Gary and I to be thrown on the papers, as long as you're okay?
Point.
I totally understand why the paper chose to name them.
I understand why they did too, but let's just remember, we've talked about this many years ago with another issue. This is private health records and private health issues that these players have spoken about. Now, that's something we normally back away from. And they did it in good faith, thinking they wouldn't be named. And
there was a supporting editorial that defended the players, by the way.
What about the lack of...
The stories serve no purpose, given that they haven't had infraction notices given to them. So it wasn't... The only purpose of the story was to name 14 people who said they might have taken something illegal.
No, you didn't have the names.
The Age has had those names for 2 months.
Had those names for 2 months, has it? You named everyone else last year involved?
Not me.
All the staff, the officials... Everyone.
Our investigative team knew exactly who the players were and had chosen not to name them.
Just the last point also, Gary. They did the first interview and spoke about the confidentiality that would be involved, and yet they haven't said one word, and yet this goes out, this report, and they get named, which isn't
We've
good
known people who weren't innocent victims, not people who were.
It's insensitive of you to say it was an hysterical overreaction of these players.
I just thought
insensitive.
The way that they smashed back the Bombers and the captains.
Well, you don't know what they're going through.
No, but I am sensitive to that.
Yeah, insensitive.
Well, it doesn't sound like
Let's talk about the Collingwood Footy Club. Nathan Buckley, no doubt, he's got his own team now. So he sits back, comes into this season now, and he's been recontracted. So it's all in front of him. Has he done the right thing by putting his stamp on it? And I guess he lives and dies on his own sword.
You know him as well as I do, Gary, and he's a very strong man. He did it his way as a player. He went to Brisbane, won a best and fairest. He wanted to come back to a big club. He's now coaching that big club. I think Eddie did the right thing. Some people say, why re-sign him. Where else is he going? But he's supporting his man.
Well, Brian Taylor, former
Yes.
Collingwood player, and Tony Shaw, a former Collingwood legend, both highly critical tonight in the media about the recontract.
Yeah, I'm a fan of him. You know, whether he didn't have his key men, that's probably the biggest question mark. He's cleared them out. He needs an extra year or two. And as I said, we'll be able to judge Bucks in a couple of years' time.
BT's a Mick Moldhouse man, though. Let's put that on the record. So that doesn't really.
So you're
hold
saying
much
he's
weight.
disingenuous?
He's not anti-Bucks, though.
BT's point is that Mick last coached in a grand final, and 2 years on, Collingwood are a lot worse off with a relatively young group that he took over at the
It's
time.
a bit of a rebuild, isn't
Yeah.
it? Just
Well, it is.
I don't reckon. It's a bit of renovation. They can be better.
Renovation.
Yeah.
Where have you got them finishing this year?
Look, they won me over in the pre-season. Be aware of the pre-season, I get that, but they won me over the way they've gone about it. I think they'll be a really good side. I reckon, for the record, I reckon their midfield is nearly the best in the game now. It's right up there with Fremantle's as the number one midfield in the
Okay,
competition.
some suggestion that can... Oh, let's have a look at this now.
Well,
while we're
there's
on that.
Pendlebury A grade, Beams A grade, Swan A grade, B plus side bottom ball. Kennedy's had a magnificent pre-season. Adams are going to be a gun, and Dwyer's there
You
in the
said
wings
they're the
as well.
best in the
They
comp.
bat deep, Gary.
So you're saying that's the best in the comp?
I reckon it's at least equal number one with Fremantle.
Well, guys, I've put them up against the other midfielders. I think
You've got Sylvia at number 4.
What I've got here is what you're getting caught
How have
up
you got
in.
Sylvia as a fourth best
There you
Fremantle?
go, Craig.
You're getting caught up in the names of Collingwood, all right? But what they don't do is they don't defend that group. So they're very, very good on the attack. Their own skipper of this year said, we cheated. So I think they're one of the worst teams in being scored against, Gary, from turnover. So it's great having great names.
That's right.
But put them up against Sydney, Hawthorn, Fremantle, and they cannot beat them.
You've got him. You've got him in day one here.
They were one win, 4 against those sides last year.
And I'm with you on
Last
that.
year, but we're talking
Last
about
year.
2014.
Well,
Yeah,
let's
but
wait
what
and see.
changed?
Just quickly, there's a suggestion that opposition clubs thought that there may have been a slight fracture in the Collingwood group last year.
Well, we'd all sort of heard it. We were all talking about it, and we heard what Nathan Buckley said after the loss to Port Adelaide in the finals about culture. It was a massive press conference, and then, of course, Heath Shaw left and other players were let go. I've asked Ken Hinkley this, Matthew, and he certainly didn't deny it. He claimed he couldn't quite remember what he'd said, but he allegedly said to his players before that game, boys, we're one team tonight and we're playing 2 teams. Now, that, I understand, has got back to the Collingwood Football Club and back to Nathan Buckley. And I think the view would be, well, if even the opposition are saying this about us, you know, clearly this gives us the mantle that we'd probably already decided to pick up and do something about it. And
They haven't shied away, though, have they?
That's why the changes were
The
made.
Magpies haven't shied away from the fact that they had culture issues or discipline issues, as you said, from Pendlebury to Bucks. I think Ed's referred to it at the big annual meeting. So I think it's a really interesting year for Collingwood.
It is. I've got them 5 to 8 around that mark.
8 I've got it.
Top 4.
Well, it's been a big off-season, hasn't it, for Brisbane? And modern-day footy's favourite son, Jonathan Brown, has been kind enough to join us on the eve of his 15th season as an AFL player. Jonathan, welcome. Been plenty of doomsday about your team in the off-season. Already tomorrow in the Australian it says, why the Lions will be this season's basket cases. How do you feel about the way your team's been depicted?
Yeah, the whole town's about to collapse and we're about to float away off the map, off the AFL map. But that's far from the truth. We've had a pretty good preparation the pre-season, and I thought we had a pretty good game against Sydney on the weekend. But obviously, a lot of people are alluding to the fact that the club looked like it was falling apart towards the end of last year. Unfortunately, Vossi missed out on getting re-signed, and then the board had a lot of upheaval. So we had a few players leave. A lot of that bad stigma seems to be following the club at the moment, but it's a new season, new board, new coach, new personnel, a lot of new players. So there's a lot of positive around the place.
Hey, Brownie, good luck for the year ahead. One of those critics is sitting alongside us, and I won't speak for him, but I will read out what he had to say a couple of weeks ago, Matthew Lloyd, about the Brisbane Lions. He said, my thinking is Brisbane's performance in the first week against Hawthorn might not be a one-off. I think they're in for a world of pain this year. I'm not sure that they're happy. New coach, a player exodus. I'm not sure that everything is happy up there in Brisbane. I think they're in for a tough year. What's your response?
You know, we're one of the clubs that needs equalisation because we're a small market team. We're not getting... We are, if you want to call it getting propped up, but the basic fact of the matter is we're a small club, so we're going to have off-field issues always. Yeah, the board stuff was unfortunate. We had 5 players that wanted to leave. Most of those guys weren't getting senior games. Now, I'm sure they'll go on to be good senior players, especially Elliot Yeo, and I think Jared Pollock's starting to come along, but they all left for different reasons. I think the majority of the reason was they couldn't get a senior game here. Now, those guys all left for different reasons. We do a tremendous amount of work off the field to make players as welcome as they possibly can. We're like a family here. 90% of our players come from interstate. So, you know, there needs to be a bit more homework done as to whether the club is happy and the people within the club are happy. Justin Lepage is doing a fantastic job. He's got a really happy, not only players, but staff working for him, those coaches. He's got more resources than Vossi was given. So the club's heading in certainly a positive direction. The basic fact of the matter is we don't have enough players between the age of 23 and 28 years old to be a contender. So we're building towards that, and our young midfield, the real core of the side going forward, they're starting to get to that 100-plus games category, and will come to hand pretty quick. We need to find some young key forwards. Hopefully they come along in the next couple of years, but I think Brisbane Lions will turn around pretty quick, Lordy.
So watching you on the Footy Show last year, Jonathan, I was convinced you were going to retire. What changed? Why have you played on?
Well, I suppose when the fire's still burning inside your gut, Caro, and that's hard to walk away from. And I don't subscribe to the theory about better off walking away 1 year too early. I'd rather walk away in an absolute mess. So I'm going to go out and have a crack this year. And I'm not saying it's my last year either. I just want to go out and give myself the best opportunity to play some good footy. I'm enjoying me role under Leper there. I've stepped back from the captaincy to try and focus a bit more on just playing and just see what I can get out of my body and try and help these younger fellas. I think it's still important for me to help the next young key forward group come through and support the new captaincy group as well. So I would have had a lot more regrets, Caro, if I'd have retired. I'd be sitting here now saying, what if?
Jonathan, we wish you well going into the season. It's going to be a big year for the Brisbane Lions. I know you'll play a big part of it. Good luck.
Thanks.
Jonathan Brown joining us, the former skipper of the Brisbane Lions. A break, good call, bad call on the arrow coming your way next right here on Footy Classified.
Welcome back to Footy Classified, and we are delighted to welcome Warren Tredrea to the show for the first time, and he'll join us each and every week throughout the course of the year to talk all things Adelaide, and we welcome him from our Adelaide studio. Wazza, a big year ahead for both the Adelaide Crows and the Port Adelaide Footy Club, and already Bryce Gibbs is the man that they are talking about as the number one target for the Crows and the Power. Will they get him?
Well, I don't know, Gary, to be honest. Yeah, thanks for the welcome. I think the biggest thing here is who needs him most. I think the Adelaide Football Club certainly need the outside run more than Port Adelaide do. It's going to cost them a fortune if we're talking contracts. Minimum free agency is going to be 4 or 5 years. He's looking at towards $700,000 a year. So certainly the cash is adding up.
Is he worth it though, Warren?
The big one is that Eddie Betts is $500,000. They've paid him over 4 years, the Adelaide Crows. So from his perspective, Adelaide, certainly Brenton Sanderson wants him. It's just whether they're going to go harder, and I think Port are interested, but that sort of money might turn them off.
I can't imagine that he's worth $3.5 to $4 million, Warren.
Well, free agency, Hutchie, that's what it is. We saw a lot of players. Is Brendan Goddard worth $800,000 allegedly at St Kilda? We've seen the numbers with Buddy Franklin's worth. He was even probably a makeshift part forward in the premiership team last year. So it all determines for me is where he wants to play his footy. Homesickness can't be an issue. 7 years at Carlton or roundabouts. He's certainly settled. He's bought a house. It's now really the question is where's he going to have success? If he thinks it's in either Adelaide and the offer's good, then I suspect he could come.
Well, so let's cut to the chase, mate. You're our man on the spot. What's the confidence level like? Adelaide talking as if they are very, very confident of getting their man.
Well, one thing is coaches always deflect, Gary, as you know, but what they've done is Brenton Sanderson says, yes, we're interested. No doubt Adelaide are working harder behind the scenes. Port are interested, but I think if he's going to leave, I think he'll end up at Adelaide if I had to make a choice between the two clubs. And really, then it's going to be dependent on where he thinks he's going to win a flag. He is certainly looking at offers and he's taking it and looking back to think, hang on, these are the best years of my football career and where am I going to go? Back to Adelaide where it used to be home or stay at one of the biggest clubs in Melbourne and Carlton?
Hey, Warren, it only seemed like yesterday that Jackson Trengove renewed his contract with the Port Adelaide Footy Club when everyone thought, why would you stay there? Now, Ollie Wines has extended his contract. Your club's looking on the rise at the moment.
Yeah, well, certainly on the rise, and this has all got to do with they've fixed their footy club, they've fixed their football program. Talk about Ken Hinkley, Alan Richardson was the director of coaching, he's no longer there. They've now got an able person that's just as good probably in Phil Walsh, David Koch, Darren Burgess, the fitness guy. Port Adelaide in the last 2 years has been as big a transformation as anyone, but they've fixed football. If you don't fix football, that's the product we're talking about. You can't expect to retain these kids. And Ollie Wine said it perfectly in the Adelaide media today. He expected to do his 2 years and then go home to Melbourne. Well, something's turned his head, and Ken Hinkley and for everyone in Port Adelaide deserves the pats on the back they'll get.
You mentioned Brenton Sanderson. The Crows pulled the trigger on a 2-year contract extension. Did he earn it?
Well, I think there's a combination. His first year, 2012, brilliant. Last year, he even said they got it wrong. They got their pre-season wrong. I don't mind it when coaches come out there and say, I made a mistake. But from his point of view, he inherited the Kurt Tippett drama. He was the one that walked in. He didn't know he was going to lose draft picks. He didn't know he was going to lose players for next to nothing, especially Kurt Tippett. So I actually said this time last year, I think they deserve to give him a start again. Adelaide have extended him by 2, which effectively is a new 3-year contract.
Is that a good decision, though, Warren?
Remaining, and now we'll be judged.
Is that a good decision? Has he done enough to earn the long-term extension that he got?
I think realistically, the board has been involved in this process. They're the ones going through it. I think he needed to start again, because if you're a coach and you've lost gun draft picks, key players in Kurt Tippett, Taylor Walker to injury, I think you deserve to start again. But he will be judged pretty severely this year, because realistically, Adelaide Footy Club weren't happy last year.
So, Warren, the biggest off-field issue for me over the last month or so was the Adelaide Heritage jumper attempt. I thought the club ended up looking completely foolish. Was Nigel Smart set up to do that press conference, and why didn't the CEO do it?
No, I think it was his baby. For all I understand, he got the OK and the tick-off from the SANFL and Lee Wicker to say, go ahead, it's all OK. I think he really underestimated what the state Guernsey means to the SA people. His comment that he made that he doesn't care what Port Adelaide think, that came across as abrupt and rude. But the bigger issue, it's not about Port and the Crows this thing. This was about the state jumper. It's sacrosanct, and I think Adelaide really probably thought it was going to be a game of one-upmanship when they lost the first showdown to Port and thought, we should be able to wear this. Realistically, no Melbourne club's going to wear the big V. No South Australian team, base team that is, should be able to wear the South Australian jumper.
So has he hurt his chances to be the next CEO, as everyone was saying he was going to be?
No, everything I keep hearing says he's the man that, commercially Adelaide's doing a lot better. He will be judged, and I'd be surprised if there's a Gillan McLaughlin-like alternative to the AFL boss. I think Nigel Smart, and when Stephen Trigg's time, everything I keep hearing saying he's the one that they're grooming.
Warren, great to have you a part of the Footy Classified family. Look forward to talking all things South Australian footy in the biggest year in the history of the state for footy, with the Adelaide Oval opening in a couple of weeks' time. Look forward to having you on the program every week.
No worries, guys. Thanks a lot.
Warren Treadray joining us right here live on Channel 9 Adelaide. A break, good call, bad call, coming your way next.
Time now for good call, bad call. Fiery opening between Cara and Hutchie. Hutchie copped on the chin. That's the good news. Now, Lordo, you're opening the batting. The AFL should follow the TAC Cup's lead with their forward line stoppage rule. Good call, bad call.
Good call, Gary. I think it clears congestion. I think we're all sick and tired of seeing the congestion in the game, and also it might bring back the power forward, kicking 80 goals plus. Here's the rule. We'll have four players inside both 50s, which would be fantastic.
Good work, Hutchwana. Dale Gartlett has embarrassed the Hawks recruiters. Good call,
bad call. Call your Jets call here, Gaz. It's early days. He's a project player. You knew there was going to be some bumps on the way. Take a breath on it. He'll be okay. Caro, round one fixture is the softest opening fixture in AFL history. Good call, bad call.
Good call, excellent call. It's just a manifest sadness to everyone in the game that Richmond and Carlton aren't opening the batting at the MCG.
Gary, Ross Lyon will never win a flag unless he changes his style of coaching. Good call, bad call.
Bad call, Hutchie. Get off his back. He's one of the great coaches in the AFL. He will tinker with it. He will win a premiership, Ross Lyon. Lordo, one of the pre-season's biggest atrocities was Geelong's attempt to charge fans for attending training. Good call, bad call.
Good call. They don't get many wrong call. The worst mistake since they flew in Brian Peake by helicopter.
We're going to hear from just to lighten the mood in here. Hutchie, now I don't know about this. Caro's decision to ignore every other person apart from Gill at the season launch was unfair.
Yeah, no, good call, Gary. All eggs in one basket call. There were people coming up all night, make your beeline. Can I have a word with the Caro? No, I'm talking to Gill. Gill.
What a load of rot.
It's all about Gill for Caro. Good luck with it. Now, Caro. Oh, here we go. It's the annual JB slap. James Brayshaw's call to hand the AFL's top job to Gill without an executive search was naive. Good call, bad call.
Anyone in the game could have said that, and it would be a bad call by James Brayshaw. This is a $2 million a year job. It's the biggest sporting job in the country. The AFL Commission has to look outside Gillan McLaughlin before it makes a decision.
And then appoint him.
No, James got that one wrong.
You'd appoint Gill?
I want to see what else is, coming up before.
Well, you
I do
interviewed
that.
him last Wednesday. Now, the hype around Jack Martin is completely over the top, Gary. Good call, bad call?
Good call. I don't mind hype around young players, but this has been extreme. As long as you call it how you see it. I saw a couple of things from Jack that he needs to work on, but it wasn't addressed during the NAB challenge. He'll be a good player.
All new Footy Classified, all new look, live each and every Monday night. Caro has demanded her own segment for Caro's Arrow. That's next, right here
again.
on Footy Classified.
Conflicts of interest in AFL football, Lord knows, they're everywhere. Take a look at this panel. Craig and his commercial ties with the AFL. Gary and his strong emotional relationship with the Melbourne Football Club. Didn't that put us under the pump last year? Matthew and his natural bias towards the Essendon Football Club. But when it comes to really shocking conflicts, surely the one handled last year by high-profile player agent Liam Pickering takes the biscuit. Now, this Arrow has taken aim at Liam in the past for pumping up his own players while calling footy, but last year, how he thought he could manage the game's biggest name in Buddy Franklin and his coach in Alistair Clarkson and the coach of the team who poached him, John Longmire, just is absolutely baffling. There was always going to be bloodshed. It was bloodshed waiting to happen. We know now that Alistair Clarkson has moved on from Liam Pickering, no doubt absolutely mystified by the deception that went on, as was the Hawthorn Football Club. And we know that Hawthorn went on and handled it pretty well and won the flag. But Liam, you have to make a choice. Choose players or choose managers. You can't do both.
First of the year, a standalone Arrow.
Very low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, it picked us off early. What's the answer then? Managers can't do coaches and players. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think so. I just don't think it can work. I mean, the hurt and the sort of disillusionment amongst Hawthorn people after meeting all year with Liam Pickering to find out they'd been so deceived. You can't underestimate that. I mean, he and Alistair Clarkson, I gather, went back... Well, Hutchie, you know this better than me, went back such a long way.
Yeah, they've split, but they're still mates.
Can you do both, Lloydie? Can you have a manager who...
Well, you just don't... I think you can. You should be able to, because you just don't know when a situation like that's going to come up. If you can have Clarkson on your books and Franklin on your books, surely you just take them. Because what do you say, Clark, I can't take you because Buddy might want to go to Sydney?
It is so simple. All he had to do, the day he went to Hawthorn and said, we're putting off contract negotiations at the end of the year, Alistair, I can't manage you anymore. I mean, it was absolutely obvious. Forget Longmire, take him right out of the equation. I don't know if they're still friends or not. I don't know about the personal relationship. I know others at Hawthorn were really, really offended by what went on.
All right, very nice start.
Let's go.
You got Pickers, JB, she's got a couple
Yeah,
of
hasn't missed any of us.
Low-hanging
Let's get into tomorrow's headlines. We start with Caro's Age newspaper. Pies urged extending Bucks contract, says legend. Tony Shaw takes aim at the plight. In the Australian, we spoke about with Brownie, while the Lions will be this season's basket cases, is the opinion piece. In the West Oz, Sandy's ready to ruck and roll, says Pav. Big build-up for Aaron Sandilands. In the Adelaide Advertiser, strain, injuries everywhere for the Crows. While in the Herald Sun, big Pies fear. Injured talls White and Reid face fitness tests. Well, there today when Jesse White has a scan on his calf. A break, the closing cook still to come, live tonight on Footy Classified. Thanks for staying up and watching Footy Classified. It's great to be back in season 2014. Time now for the closing cook with Gary.
Well, I can make it easy and we can just get another close-up, but I won't. What I'm going to do is a week before the season opens, we all get out. Lordo, I know you went and watched 4 games on the weekend just to get yourself sharp. I also travelled hundreds of kilometres to watch some footy to make sure I was ready to go for the season. And then I turned on the basketball, of all places, and there, have a look at this. You'll pick this up in the corner. He's sitting inside the huddle. He's Hutchie. He's virtually with Chris Anstey telling him how to play. So, I don't know. There must have been some corporate sidebar here because you should have been at the footy and you're at the
Great
basketball.
club, the Melbourne Tigers, with my mates Jay and Bill. Fantastic.
Got no question about that, but you couldn't have got any closer, could you?
No, they were a reasonably good seats.
Hey,
all looked after.
a great first show, by the way, all you guys. We've got the season opener, of course, this Friday night at Etihad Stadium. Collingwood taking on Freo. Just I want a very quick indication of which way you're leaning.
Freo for mine, guess.
Hutcher?
Doggers.
You going the Dockers?
Pies.
Yeah, and you picked them to finish in the top 4.
Yep.
All right, well, we might have
And obviously the Saints will beat
a
Melbourne.
little coffee and get together and see if we can mend some feathers. Hutchie,
Where
good
will they
luck.
finish in the 8
Good
Saints
luck
in
with
there,
that.
Gary?
Next Monday night we'll be back.
Brody,
Footy Classified.
Murdoch, Brownlow.